Welcome back to SunScream. Tonight's guest is Daniel Volpe. Daniel is the author of Talia, Billy Silver, and the recent A Gift of Death. Welcome, Daniel. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us. My guest tonight is Daniel Volpe. Welcome, Daniel.
Hi, Matt. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Interesting. You're the first sort of like heavy gore person I've talked to in doing this.
Yeah, I definitely like the extreme side of the gore and horror stuff. Definitely.
What drew you to that initially?
I've always kind of been infatuated with the more realistic and extreme kind of horror. When I was a little kid, I don't know if you saw it in my Amazon bio. When I was 4 years old, my grandfather accidentally rented me A Nightmare on Elm Street when he was watching me. I was about 4 years old, and so back in the day when video stores existed, he didn't have his glasses, and I kind of picked it up off the shelves, and he rented it for me, and I pretty much got put in a room to watch it by myself. And can we curse on here?
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, it scared the ever living shit out of me. So ever since then, I kind of just love the horror, and the gore just kind of came with that. Just big fan of all the slashers and all the gooey stuff there.
I guess our skeleton is well suited for you today then.
Yes, definitely. I love the shirt.
We got the glove too.
Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, nice.
Yeah, so it was the original Nightmare on Elm Street.
Honestly, I have no idea which one it was, and clearly he didn't either because he gave it to a 4 year old. So it just kind of it was an accident. I probably just for some reason it was grabbable, and I just grabbed it and put it on the counter, and he rented it for me.
I had the awkward adolescent experience of watching From Dusk to Dawn with my grandfather in a movie theater.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, because all we knew was vampire western.
Yeah. What could go wrong?
Yeah, had no
Especially when
idea what we were.
who was it? Cheech or Chong was going on about his pussy rant. So that was
Yeah,
probably
Cheech
interesting.
Marin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was interesting.
Well, because I feel like it's two films, right? You got before they get to the vampiric den strip club and after.
Yeah.
Which I guess makes sense. You have the dusk and dawn period. I don't know.
It's like it was planned.
Something like that. So one thing with these, I always indicate we are very spoiler heavy in these. So I do encourage the people to read the book before watching because I like to talk about actually as though an opportunity to get more information about what goes on in the book too. So just to let you know as well. Are you familiar with the author Dennis Cooper?
Well, give me some of his titles. It sounds familiar.
Frisk would probably be the most known one to you, or anybody.
No, I'm thinking of someone. Think of someone else then.
Okay. He, in my mind, is one of the earlier 20th century examples of this kind of literature. He was doing it before, like even Bret Easton Ellis was doing sort of more gory stuff. And for the longest time was sort of like the standard, around this kind of gore. The one thing he does that I really like is he talks about the feeling of disinterest of killing someone because it doesn't go the way the characters expect.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that as a good writing point there.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen anybody else do anything with that kind of like the disinterest of murder.
Yeah.
Obviously your characters, I mean, especially we'll call it the viewing audience for what is produced in the course of the book has a keen interest. I think one of the interesting set pieces to the whole thing, of course, is that it's the 90s. I'm realizing now, and it was certainly not intentional, like every one of the books I've talked to the authors thus far, the story has been set in the 90s.
Oh, really?
Yes, there's a lot of emergent horror right now, horror fiction around the 90s. Is there, I mean, for yours, it makes a lot of sense because it's a key plot device that it's VHS versions of snuff films, essentially, in terms of what they become. But is there something that draws you more to that?
Well, I'm kind of a '90s kid. I was born in '85, so I grew up in the mid to late '90s and early 2000s, and I just kind of liked that time period, and I kind of felt like it was a little more simplistic. There's not really cell phones. It kind of made plot lines advance a little quicker and easier to eliminate cell phones completely. And I don't think, I mean, don't hold me to this, but I don't think this is the last time you'll see Talia. So I
Okay.
didn't want to do anything too close to present day where I couldn't backpedal with it. So I was like, oh, in the mid '90s or early '90s, I think that that'd be a good time frame to set this in, just because of the plot line and the fact that I have some other ideas going forward for that character.
It is cell phones are like one of the crises of horror.
Yeah. Brian Keene wrote Urban Gothic. I don't know if you've read that one or not, but in that, these kids end up in this house in an urban setting, and for some reason, the cell phones don't work. And he goes into it and he talks about the house blocking them out, and the effects of the house. But it is one of those hurdles for current writers that we have to kind of overcome, and because a lot of stuff can be solved, like you're not taking the wrong turn because you have Siri and GPS, and for the most part, your cell phone works just about everywhere. So we got to try to overcome that. So setting it in the '90s makes it a lot easier.
I think it's interesting because you always have that horror nostalgia for the '80s, right?
Mm.
And I think what's fascinating though is that because of the cell phone crisis, a lot more stuff is going to be driven that way. I have seen a couple things like these people go to a haunted house, like a Halloween kind of haunted house, and they confiscate the cell phones. I've seen like Slacks, right? They do this media lockdown so they can't have access to their cell phones. But I think you're going to see more and more stuff set in a pre-cell phone time period, just as a means of solving the issue.
Yeah, because it definitely, a lot of things definitely be solved without them, for sure.
I mean, with yours though, like ideas like the dark web and stuff could easily be incorporated into the same sort of like character zeitgeist of what's being produced in Talia.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely could have gone that route, and but for me, it kind of sat with me with the snuff film and that kind of limited production, and just kind of like the movie 8mm with Nicolas Cage, like that kind of really secluded, like secret society kind of thing where people are paying for these movies and they have these certain requests, and certain stars will say they want to bring in to perform. And I felt like that VHS, like that big clunky ass camcorder sitting there, is just adds to it.
It is fascinating because you think of like a snuff film and you think of it as like on a VHS, right? You think of it as being this weird rogue artifact that's out in the world.
Yeah, that unlabeled black VHS that you find and you're afraid to put it in
Yeah,
because you
that's
don't know
like
what the hell is going to be on it.
that's like in a Disney clamshell that's been X'd out or something,
Yeah, a red X on it.
Yeah, which is interesting. I mean, because I think people think of snuff films as being urban legends too, and they're we know now that they're absolutely not.
Oh yeah.
Uh, I mean, anybody who watched the Netflix documentary "Don't Fuck with Cats" knows that a lot of people actually consumed one a few years ago.
Oh yeah. I haven't seen it. I've heard about it. I heard it's pretty fucked up.
It was funny because I was following that in real time, and I've just some of the claims were in that documentary. I'm like, a lot more people were aware of this than this documentary is leading on, because I followed it in the news when it was an active
Oh wow.
thing. Yeah, it's a very strange thing, and what's actually stranger is you can go on YouTube and watch people watching it, and
Like reaction videos.
yeah, but the thing is, the interesting ones to watch are the people who were watching it before it was revealed that it was real,
Mm,
and them talking about how fake it looked. So that's what I'm interested in, like the idea of like people seeing something so horrifically real and not relating to it as being real.
yeah, I think I think part of your brain also wants to cancel it out too. Like you see something so horrific and you're like, this can't be real. I can't believe I'm seeing something so horrendous and horrific that it just absolutely cannot be real. And then when they find out it is real, they're like, holy shit. And they gotta try to, you know, erase it from their brain.
Um, in terms of this, or like this genre too. We were talking before we started today, and I was talking actually about like 120 Days of Sodom being sort of like where this kind of starts in terms of a genre in the late 18th century with the Marquis de Sade. And also the idea of like, you have to escalate when you write something like this, right? The first scene isn't going to be the most shocking scene.
No, it's almost like that. As I was writing this book, I wrote a few scenes, and there's some that I kind of edited and toned down for that reason. Because I'm like, I don't want to put something too extreme in the middle or the beginning, because then it's going to wash out the ending. You're like, oh, that's the ending, you know? So I kind of tried to amp it up. And when I actually wrote this book and I sent it to my editor, he wrote back to me and he's like, the end scene has to be much, much worse. He's like, make it worse, make it more violent, make it more brutal. And I'm like, all right. And I ended up adding like 1,000 extra words. So that final major kill scene was that was completely redone, because I kind of left it a little bit vague. And he's like, no, he's like, doesn't fit the book. He's like, you had all these violent graphic killings in here, so the ending has to be the most. That's the grand finale, the fireworks spectacular. So he's like, fucking cut loose. So I did.
Well, it's also like a catharsis responsibility too, right? Each one builds
Yeah.
In an opposite way.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to go with that, with the deaths of the characters, how they were, the least offensive character, I guess you'll say, was killed in the beginning, the first kind of major death. And then as they escalate, it's almost like fighting bosses in a video game. You got to fight, you got to get the little ones, and then you go up to the main boss, and the main boss got his in the end, for sure.
It's an interesting thing. I mean, some authors have also, because it's interesting because New York has been a fairly common setting of late in horror too. And I mean, you literally talk about like the city eating people up and spitting them back out, more so than anybody else that I've read. And sort of like the degradations that come in response to that.
Yeah, I live in New York. I don't live in New York City, thankfully, but I live close enough that I feel it. I've been to New York City. I have family that lives in New York City, and they've been there for decades. Like, my family is originally from New York City, so that culture and that stuff I've seen over the years. Luckily, I've never had to live there because I don't really care for that congestion. And but it's definitely a visceral place, and it makes a great setting for horror, because you're in the rat race and nobody cared. You could probably be dead on a bench for a week and nobody would probably even notice in certain parts. So that's kind of why I chose to set it there.
It is an odd experience, because every time I go to New York, I'm imminently aware of how I don't have enough money to be there.
Yeah, New York is an expensive state to live in. It's great to work here because you make a lot, and then you can retire and move to the South. But everything is cost of living is fairly high, so you might make a lot of money, but it's going right out the door. So.
I mean, and you have your setup with Talia is pretty traditional in terms of, grows up in the Midwest, comes to New York to be an actress. Right. Catastrophe.
Yeah, I'm not going to say I don't put research into it, but me personally, when I read, I don't like to sit there and have to work when I read. I like to read for entertainment. I don't want to sit there and be like, all right, well, I want to figure out the symbolism in this and worry about this, and then read the subtle nuances in this part to pick it up again on page 300. I'm a slasher kind of guy. I like the blood and guts. I like a straightforward kind of story. And that's what I like to read. So that's what I like to write.
Sure.
So that's kind of where all my stories and my books kind of are along that same story arc. It's a gentle build up to the climax, and then all hell breaks loose. Yeah.
Calling you out there, man.
Yeah.
You start with a fire hydrant sized dildo. I don't think that
it was a fire extinguisher, but
fire extinguisher. Sorry. Pardon me, fire extinguisher, not fire.
Sorry, tomatoes.
A gentle buildup, though.
Yeah, there was a lube on it, so I mean, it was gentle.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's what I mean. I guess I like the traditional kind of story arc, and just And I like the traditional 80s horror stuff. So I kind of just go for that.
So, I mean, in terms of that, I mean, because there's, a lot of 80s horror is very varied, right? We had David Weiner on, who did the In Search of Darkness documentaries about the 80s. And, I mean, 80s horror is very different depending what roads you want to go down. So are you more like the basket case kind of horror, or what?
I like, for me, like in the 80s horror, like I love the slashers. Like, I mean, I know Candyman's not in the 80s. I think it's like the early 90s, but like I love Friday the 13th, your Freddy's, Michael Myers, Halloween series. The new one, I mean, it's not new, so new, but like Hatchet, like that's a new slasher I really like. But that 80s horror, Fright Night, just that cheesy, corny, over the top kind of stuff. I just love it.
How about
I
like
don't know why.
contemporary stuff like Terrifier?
I've never seen that one.
You need to see Terrifier.
Oh, Terrifier. Yes, I have seen that one. Yes, I know what you're talking about. I think it's a Terrifier, 2 words.
Oh
No, I actually I do a podcast with a couple other horror authors, and we had a big debate over Terrifier and Hatchet, because I said I like Hatchet better than Terrifier, and Aaron Beauregard was about to jump through the screen, and he's like, you didn't fucking like Terrifier? I'm like, I like Terrifier. I was like, but I like Hatchet better. And he's like, that's fucking blasphemous. I can't believe you like that better than this. And I'm like, I don't know, dude. I was like, I thought Terrifier was okay, but that's just my opinion.
How about something more high budget like Bone Tomahawk?
I liked Bone Tomahawk because I do like the Western kind of thing. I love Tombstone. It's probably one of my top 3 movies. And obviously Kurt Russell's in both. Bone Tomahawk was good, very, really fucked up. I mean, you have, the scene in that.
Yeah.
So that was one of the guys at work was like, oh, you'll know when you get to the scene. I'm like, tell me what it is. He's like, I'm not telling you. He's like, you'll just know. I'm like, okay. And then I found out.
Yeah, I mean, Terrifier has the same scene, essentially. It's not that different, except for cannibalism in one and not in the other.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, right?
Pretty much.
No, because we got Christopher Triana is coming on as well. And so his is very splatterpunk as well in terms of the gore factor, except for they're more Western and yours is more urban. So in terms of it too, did you have to like create a hierarchy that you thought you would kind of like almost like go through in terms of like how each of these scenes would unfold in terms of the videos that are made, or?
Not really. Like I kind of thought about them. I thought them out, and the opening scene. It's funny because that opening line, I don't know, that was like that like just hit me one day, and I was like, holy shit, that's a great opening line. I was like, that'll draw people in. Is it going to draw you in, or it's going to push you away? Sure. So I tell people, they're like, well, I don't know if I'm going to like it. I'm like, read the first page. I was like, if you make it through the first page, I was like, you'll be okay. I was like, if you don't, then it's not for you. And actually, all 3 of my books that are out right now, it's the same thing. On the first page, if not the first chapter, maybe, if you get through it and you say, this isn't for me, then you'll know by then. If you're like, all right, I can kind of mess with this, then it's only going to get worse, but it's you always know where we're headed. So when I decided to make Talia in the certain videos that she's in, I wanted to kind of escalate them all, but I wanted to almost feel semi-organic in their making. So I didn't want to start off the opening chapter with them just doing a snuff film and hacking somebody apart, because I wanted to kind of build these characters up and really work them in, so that people kind of got a feeling of their integrity and their characterization, and then just kind of find their breaking points and then just fucking shatter them.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting because you get into other like smaller vices of people quite frequently, right? Whether it be just something as casual as somebody smelling like cigarette smoke or, cocaine usage or something, versus these larger extreme vices and the relationship to people. Some we meet, some we don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to kind of put that in there, and you nailed it on the head with that, with the vices. Like you said, something that, I'm not going to say smoking or drug use is innocent, but it's not nearly as bad as necrophilia and cannibalism. So,
Yeah.
I mean, those are kind of frowned upon, at least in most societies. So I kind of wanted to show that everybody has a vice and everybody has some kind of need, and some are just more disturbing than others.
Yeah, I mean, like Sally has probably the most crazed needs, right?
I
Uh,
fucking love him. He was probably my favorite character I think I've ever done. I don't know why. He was just I have actually a spinoff, a prequel of his that I'm gonna possibly start working on soon. But I really enjoyed his character.
Sort of like
I don't
an
know if that's
origin story.
yeah. I don't know what that says about me, but I really liked I really liked writing his character. Definitely.
Well, you want to find out why, sort of like, especially the way you describe his eyes and things, right? You sort of like want to find out why and how we got to this point.
Yeah, and that's actually what happened with Talia. Talia was actually a supporting character in my first book, Billy Silver, and when I finished that book, she's a tattoo artist in that book. Um, Obviously, it's way in the future, so she already has all these abilities that she has in the end of this book. And when I finished that, people were like, "I really want to know more about her. I want to know more about her." And I had no intentions of ever writing this. And people are like, "I really want to know. I want to know." So I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to know. So then I kind of just started working on his backstory. I'm like, what would she have done prior to this when she was still a human? And this just kind of came along, and um, it just kind of happened.
There is, I mean, you definitely have, I feel like almost like a cult following of people, because I've observed this on the interwebs.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say the extreme horror crowd and the people that read my stuff are awesome. They are super interactive. A lot of them are aspiring authors. I mean, I've only been around seriously since November. I'm not like a veteran or anything like that. And people kind of ask me questions, and I try to help when I can. And I definitely don't know it all, and I learn a lot from people.
But
But
you're
the people that
cranking
read,
it out.
yeah, well, 2020 unfortunately was really bad for some people, but for me, in the literary sense, it was great. I wrote 5 books in 2020, and about 10 to 15 short stories, probably about 200 and something thousand words altogether. Um, and I have another book coming out on the 25th.
Mhm.
That is a novella, that'll be released through D&T Publishing. And then I'll have a 75,000 word novel coming out from D&T also in November. And then 2021, I have a few, or 2022, I have a few more planned. So
So
I'm a fast writer.
apparently.
Yeah.
uh, I mean, I mean, because you say you write what you like, which obviously helps. I mean, obviously, if you're writing things you don't like, it's going to slow you down. Um, where do they come? I hate to ask that as a cheesy question, like where do they
Yeah.
come from?
Where do
But
your
I mean,
ideas
like,
come from?
I'm not really asking where they come from per se, but it's like, I mean, they're very dark, some of them, and so like, where does that desire to write a character who's into necrophilia and cannibalism come from?
Honestly, I don't know, because I didn't have an abusive childhood. I had I had 2 loving parents. I had great siblings. I grew up in a nice house, and with friends and family. So like, I didn't have any traumatic experiences, luckily, as a kid. I just always liked the dark stuff. When I was a kid, I was big into Goosebumps and stuff. And then as I got older, my reading abilities advanced a lot faster than my peers. So when I was
Sure.
probably in my very, very early teens, if not 10, 11, 12, I started reading Stephen King. And I like scaring people. And you can ask my kids, because I'll jump out at them every now and scare shit out of them. But I like scaring people, and I like telling stories. So it just kind of progressed into that. And I don't want to write to gross people out, but if that's a byproduct of my writing, then all the better. So I just like that dark stuff. I like to explore how dark people can be. I'm not saying I love like serial killer documentaries, but I've seen a few of them here and there. But I also like the supernatural stuff, because then you kind of have free reign to do what you want, because there's no rules.
Well, you had that flip, right, in
Yep.
Talia. So you get to play on both sides of the fence in that way.
Yeah, I kind of like doing that with actually in Billy Silver. It's very similar, where I'll have a very human like drama in the beginning, where these reprehensible characters are, and they're doing stuff to each other and themselves that you're like, I can't believe people do this. And then I'll turn it on its head and we'll go into a supernatural realm. And then you're like, holy shit, now it's going to happen. So I like you said, I like playing both sides with that and kind of bouncing back and forth.
In terms of just sort of like again with these building set pieces, you know, was there anything you edited back that you thought, no, that's too taboo?
Yes, definitely. So we're gonna do spoilers on this. Is that what we said?
Oh yeah, spoiler alert.
Okay. So the rape scene with Simone, I probably knocked out about 700 words. That was very descriptive and very graphic. The scene that's in the book now was very, very heavily edited. When I wrote it, I went back through it and I reread it, and I'm like, not that's not pertinent to the story, but I just kind of felt that it wasn't in good taste. And even though it's extreme horror, there was no need to put the descriptions in there that I put, because I do understand that this is entertainment and it's not real. But for some people that have had traumatic experiences, especially sexual abuse, I didn't want to, not that I didn't want to offend anyone, because I understand that this is horror and you're there to be horrified, but there was no need for the graphic descriptions that I had. So I did dial them back. Quite, like I said, I probably knocked out 700 some words in that. Just because I felt like it was the right thing to do, and it still got the point across with what was in the book.
No, I mean, it is a very different sort of structure to that scene than the other ones, I feel like, too, in terms of just descriptive reaction points versus the other, because you get a lot more like internal, what somebody's thinking moments, like what the person who is clearly going to die is thinking, what, you know, the taste in their mouth or something like that, versus, you know, say the first guy who gets whipped, right? We just hear that he's screaming and things. We don't hear like what he's thinking, and we don't get his internal monologue at all.
Yeah, that was something that, like I said, with Simone, the rape scene, I kind of, like I said, I dialed that back a lot, and I do like that kind of internal monologue stuff. I try not to jump back and forth too much between viewpoints, but I do feel that in some instances it's important to get that across with the characterization to help build that character and the rapport with the reader, for them to see like, hey, this is a real person here, and you know, this is not going to be pretty. What's going to happen to them, and they know it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we know that long before, too. Well, not too long before, you know what I mean? Like we know long before it happens that it's going to end very poorly.
Oh yeah.
I was much more surprised that it got reiterated in relationship to Talia, because I wasn't sure where it was going to go. Like, obviously there was surveillance going on, but I was really surprised in the transition to the scene with Ingrid, and then they're gonna kill her. Like I wasn't expecting that to be the shift that happened.
Yeah, that scene, I had that in my head. I'm like, how am I going to make this transition? And I think that all along they were planning on getting rid of her, I think, from the beginning. And I tried to kind of insinuate that it was going to happen at some point, just because with Simone in one scene was talking about girls she's seen come and go, and they kind of just leave, but you don't really get into where they went. And I kind of wish I'd spent a little more time putting those Easter eggs in, and like that, hey, eventually they're going to get rid of you, and it's not going to be with a pink slip and a severance package. It's going to be with a fucking bullet in the head or an ice pick in the neck and dumped in a shallow grave or on the side of the highway. So with that scene with Ingrid in the car, I kind of want to work that in there and just kind of surprise Talia, just like I kind of surprised the reader, like, holy shit, she kind of should have seen this coming with the people she's dealing with, but she didn't. And that was kind of what I wanted the reader to feel too, like, holy shit, what the hell's going on? Why are they stabbing her? And just that realization. And it was the easier way for me to work the razor into it as well, which obviously, if you see the cover of the book, you know, that's a big part of it.
Yeah, the cover does give a lot away. I guess what there were a couple thoughts I had at the time. I thought, well, there's probably the expectation that the average person is going to become like someone is going to like become addicted to drugs, and they're just going to flame out that way. That seems to be like the generalized expectation, because you allude to that too with one of Talia's earlier scenes that she confesses to her father, with the people in the animal masks and things,
Yeah.
the heroin addict. But I guess it was such a jump to me because there was the gifting of the razor, and so I thought that, is this going to be like this weird, hostile, you get your tattoo kind of
Yeah.
moment?
Yeah, like that kind of like a talisman kind of thing. And I think it was kind of almost like her test, like to see what she was going to do. And she obviously failed the test in the video. And I think Ingrid giving it to her was kind of one of those things like, what are you going to do with this now? Like, where are we going to go from here, little girl kind of thing. And I think at that point they already knew what her fate was going to be, and it's kind of toying with her a little bit.
Ingrid is such a strange one too, because she has sort of completely split lives, right?
Yeah, I have a backstory on her as well. I was actually thinking about doing like a duology with her, like having one half of the story about her, or one half of the book about her story, and then one half about Sally's story, and doing because she's interesting. And I started writing her, and I had really no intentions of going into her backstory, but I was thinking to myself, I'm like, what better backstory would this be for this horrendous woman that tortures and murders people than to be like Susie Homemaker, and she has a husband and kids, and they want to talk to mommy on the phone, and she's a businesswoman pretty much, but she's living this life where instead of going out to conferences, she's fucking slaughtering people.
Yeah.
So I liked her character.
It was sort of just a strange, like, but you see it occasionally, like, kind of thing. Weirdness pops up in horror occasionally, where like just the ordinary daily life of these people. It's like when you see like videos or photographs of like Mike Myers or Jason Voorhees in the grocery store or something.
Yeah. Well, even look at like John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, and who was the other one? I think it was the BTK. He was another one. Was like a regular old suburban dad who was out there at night fucking strangling people and killing them. And John Wayne Gacy, people buried under the house, and and then they had a family and kids and stuff like that. So you just never know. And that was kind of the feeling I wanted for Ingrid, was that there's this woman that just is raising her kids with her husband, and then she gets called away to business. And like I said, her business is not seminars and stuff. It's fucking murdering people for money.
Yeah. I don't know. She seems like turn on, like a performer can see the red light and she just kind of goes, because she has this weird. You describe her mouth making this sort of like wry smile. Beforehand.
So in some of her backstory, I kind of alluded to it with the KGB stuff in her backstory in the book, but I'm going to go more into that, how she gets drafted into the KGB and how she becomes kind of this like torturer and stuff, and how she gets off on it, which obviously you can tell by the things she does in the book, how she kind of gets off physically and emotionally on violence. So I'm definitely going to explore her a little bit more.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it's funny because that all happens in a kiddie pool.
Yeah. I kind of like that kind of juxtaposition of, hey, this is supposed to be like a summer retreat for kids, but yet again, they're dumping entrails of this guy who just got slit, open with a razor blade in this kiddie pool.
It's also interesting too, because like we learn less and less about each victim up until that point.
Yeah. So I try to make that, kind of cut the personalization out of them. At that point, I'm starting to go for the gore. I want you kind of to not have, it's more about Talia and the other characters as opposed to the quote unquote victims. Like, we don't care about what happens to them. We care about what the other characters do to them, how it affects them. So they're more of just like prop pieces as opposed to actual people or characters in that point.
Sure. And then of course, the main sort of like impetus. Well, you have that sort of almost like Spectre and James Bond, right? This organization that exists that we don't really get into, that Mike is immediately under.
Yeah, so that was kind of my, little allusion to the mafia, which, in New York City in the 90s and obviously early 80s and whatnot, the New York City has a deep mafia rooted underground, and they pretty much would do anything to make a buck. And if illicit snuff films or some serious, disgusting pornography is going to get them money, then hey, great. But obviously, I never go in and say, "Oh, this is the Italian mafia." I mean, they all have pretty Italian names, so you can kind of deduce what you
Well,
will.
they go to Italian restaurants too.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
All of a sudden, the Billy Joel song is in my head. um, yeah, it's pretty fascinating in terms of just how, I mean, the ways it escalates, the way a person can be manipulated into these sort of like choices, right?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you'll see people on the news and you're like, how the fuck did they get this deep into this? And how did this happen? And it all starts off with something small. You know, you
Yeah.
take $1 from someone, now you're in debt to them, and then all of a sudden you're before you know it, you're doing, crimes. And then you're like, oh my God, I'm committing assaults and felonies and, maybe a murder or something like that. And that's kind of how I want it to feel. Like Talia's here for these, these big aspirations and dreams, and something that seems innocent starts to escalate. And then you start getting indebted to these people. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, you're with a big German lady cutting some dude open in a kiddie pool.
And then you end up shot, stabbed,
Yeah,
crawling.
broken.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I don't know, you said you're not really into metaphors here, but I definitely got like a devil metaphor with
Yeah, no, that was not really metaphorical. That's pretty much straight out. Like that guy was pretty much the devil. So in Billy Silver, you see Talia, and again, she's the same character. She's just covered in tattoos, and she's a tattoo artist, and she's kind of like this vengeance demon, I guess we'll say, for lack of a better term. And when she gets thrown down the hill and shot and stabbed, and pretty much it's that that Faust kind of character where it's, you're gonna sell your soul, and I can save you and I can help you, but you're mine. So that's kind of how I wanted that feeling to go, and I think I kind of hopefully portrayed it
oh
pretty
yeah,
well.
it reminded me of the devil in The Prophecy.
I don't know which one was
Vito
that.
Mortensen is the devil in that.
Oh, okay. I've seen. It's been a long time. I don't know if I've seen it in a while, but I think I saw it.
I mean, his opening line is, I could lay you out and put your mother's feces in your mouth. That's how we meet the character.
It's far from Aragorn. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I like Robert De Niro as the devil too in Angel Heart. Particularly when he's eating oh man, put that on your
I'm
list.
more of a book guy as opposed to the movies. So I've seen some movies, but like I read a lot more than I watch movies.
Okay. It's such a eccentrically wonderful performance.
Yeah, I'll have to, maybe one night when the kids go to bed, I'll have to sit up late and hop on the internet.
If nothing else, YouTube him eating an egg.
Okay.
It's just like, it's like it's like when you read something too, because I'm teaching a class on Dracula in the fall, so I keep rereading Dracula, and it's just like every time I reread it, it's like, this should have been over so early.
Yeah.
Why are you here? Why are you not running for the hills? Like, the comedian Eddie Izzard does this bit about horror, and it's like, you hear that with the violins. It's like, run away from that sound,
Yeah. Don't go upstairs. Don't go in the basement. Get in your car and drive the fuck away. Check the back seats first.
Yeah. And you sort of wonder at certain points, but then we all make bad choices too. So
oh yeah. Absolutely.
Not quite this bad.
Yeah. No.
I mean, I don't know you that well, so maybe.
No, definitely not. Look, if you look at my basement, I have all these little dolls behind me. So I've made some choices, but no bad ones.
I was thinking just how that juxtaposition too, when we were talking about the kiddie pool and like what we're talking about now with the dolls behind you.
Yeah, no. I did a podcast at Necrocasticon with Tommy Clark not long ago, and they called me out on it because I had my camera a little lower. And they're like, "Are you in your kids' room?" And I'm like, "No, it's the basement. And all their toys are scattered everywhere." So I like it as my backdrop. It kind of shows my human side, I guess, rather than just writing perverted fucking horror.
I mean, what were they expecting to be on your walls?
I don't know.
See, I think that's
maybe.
That's on them, not you.
Yeah.
Like that's so much more about them than you.
Yeah, no.
So I mean, like we were talking about earlier, you do have sort of like I'm gonna call it a rabid fan base. You have a very devoted fan base. So, I mean, I feel like you've gotten pretty solid feedback, especially as you say, for being in the business for such a short time.
Yeah, everybody they've been very receptive to that. And I kind of attribute that to the fact that like I'm out there. Like I'm not shy. I'll talk to people. People private message me all the time. Usually, not usually, but a lot of them are fucking scammers that just want something and they'll, hey, can you send me your Cash App or this or that? But for the most part, like I have so many great readers out there that I consider friends that are just awesome people. I'm always available. People will private message me on Facebook and Instagram, and then now I'm on Twitter.
Now on Twitter,
they can get me there. Unfortunately, I'm still kind of trying to flounder my way through it, but if you try to reach out to me on Twitter, I might answer you back. But I feel like I'm personable. When people buy signed copies from me, I try to get them out immediately. I send them shipping numbers. I interact. I read my peers' work. I critique it. I tell them, I promote them. If I don't have something out or I'm reading something from them, I try to promote it, because I think I want to read the best stuff out there. I'm a reader before I'm a writer. And this is not a competition. And I want people to succeed. And because I want to read some sick shit too. So that's why I think people kind of gravitated towards me, obviously because hopefully they're enjoying the books, but I think I hope my personality kind of helps push them closer to me.
Yeah, I mean, I reached out to you and it was
Yeah.
congenial.
Yeah. When the first time you messaged me, I was sitting next to my wife and my daughter's softball game. I'm like, I don't know if this guy's real or if he's screwing with me, because you sent me a list of the authors that were involved. I'm like, I don't think I belong here with them. And I was like, I'll reach back to him and we'll see what happens. But no, I appreciate it. And like I said,
Yeah,
I always
we're
like
all
good
here.
chat. Yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, I wanted a variety. I didn't want like everything to be one type of thing. We had said we were going to do 13, and I was like, I wanted some people who do self-publishing. I wanted some people who did, more of the mainstream things, and just I wanted variety. I didn't want anything. It gets boring for me too, like if I'm just talking to the same kind of thing over and over again, it's like, what more do I have to say,
Absolutely.
And I like the genre of horror, and that's a very very varied a thing to like. And I think that's important for people to recognize too, that it's not, it's not all gore and it's not all supernatural and it's not all, so you can find your niche within horror is what I tend to tell people, because a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like horror because of X, Y, or Z, and it's like, well, there's a lot more there.
Yeah, and that's the one thing. Horror, it really fits for anyone. Like you said, there's so many different variations. Cosmic horror, extreme horror, splatterpunk stuff. Your traditional, your human based, ghost, monsters. Like Hunter Shea does exclusively like monsters, and he does a great job. Like cryptids too, like Bigfoot. I think he just released Bigfoot in the Bronx. And he makes that stuff work. He's a great author and he's a funny guy. So I mean, there's a horror for everyone out there.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I mean, that's also like in the fall when we do the more academic program, where we try to, make that point clear too, in terms of just like the different types of people come on and present research on various things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's it's kind of cool to me that you still see the sort of a desire for these different forms to come out, not just filmically, but also in literature. Because I mean, I think sometimes people get, I don't know, a little full of themselves about the literary side. Like they get way too serious.
Yeah, and I'm not one of them. Like I like the I mean, if you've read any of my books, you'll know that like I don't take myself too seriously. I'm there to have a good time. I like those. I've kind of found my groove with that 35 to 45,000 word novella range. Billy Silver, my first one, is short. That's only like 26,000. But Awaken in Blood and Talia are right almost exactly the same word count at like 40,000 words. So I like a fast read. I like a brutal read. And I think that people are starting to kind of pick that up now, and kind of they're enjoying that.
So I mean, you're now making the switch too into working with a publishing house. So what prompted the switch?
Self-publishing, I'm not very good with computers.
Hence the Twitter anxiety.
Yeah, I don't really care for computers. I try to do the most basic of formatting and try to make it look as clean as possible. And honestly, like I said, I have a wife and kids and a job and everything and other obligations. So it takes time to do self-publishing. It takes money as well, which, it's important to put out a good product. So it does take time and money. So at this point, I've signed with a publishing company, and I think for the near future, I'm probably going to do kind of like a hybrid model where I will have them publish some of my work if they have availability, and I'll probably self-publish some of my other stuff. So books that are like spin-off of books that are already self-published, I'll probably continue that and self-publish their sequels. But some of the other stuff, my standalone stuff, will probably go to my publishing house for now.
Okay. Are you looking to do any like appearance kind of stuff? You're like doing any cons or anything coming up?
I am planning on. I'm definitely going to try. Like I said, I live in New York, so I'm going to try to make the Atlantic City one. There's one in Atlantic City, New Jersey, in September. I think I'm going to try to shoot for that one. Me and Aaron Beauregard are going to hopefully get down there together and hopefully sell some books. There's some other ones that are not too far out in Pennsylvania, so I might try to hit some of them. But I just keep my eyes open for. I would love to do them. I really want to go to Scares That Care this year.
Oh, in
But
Williamsburg.
but unfortunately, I'm gonna be on vacation, so I'm not gonna be able to attend there. But yeah, I'm hoping to, because I love talking to people, and I enjoy meeting other authors and fans, and the just people in the industry.
Yeah. Um, it yeah, I mean, like we talk about, like, it's just so varied, and there's so many different people to discuss different things with it. So it's nice that you are so open and interactive with people about it, because that's not always the case.
No, absolutely not. I've definitely seen that with a lot of authors. Is they're like, I don't know why I'm not selling. I'm not selling, and I'm like, well, you're a little bit, you're not that you're not approachable, but you're a little introverted. And I think that for some of us in this genre, even writers in general, writing is it's a solitary art. I'm sitting in a room, usually in my office on my computer by myself writing. The writing part is easy for a lot of people. I think it's the marketing part and putting yourself out there and doing interviews like this and going to conventions and being approachable. And they may be the nicest people in the world, but if people don't know that, then they're not gonna know. You can write the best book, but if you have no marketing, then it's not going to go anywhere.
So I have some general questions I ask everybody I have on. So
All right.
I'm just always curious. So what are you reading now?
Actually, right now I'm reading a really, really pulpy, shitty Western.
Okay.
So I love Death's Head Press, and Chris Triana I could see his book in the background there, his 13th Coyote. I love Westerns, and I really love that splatter Western stuff. So I have an outline for one that I'm going to start working on, hopefully in the fall or winter. So I'm just kind of doing a little research and reading up on some older Westerns. And I read a lot of books, so I'll probably go from that. I'll probably go back into some indie horror from some of my other peers that they've sent me. But right now I'm reading, I think it's called The Frontiersman by William Johnstone. So very, very corny, very corny.
Yeah, Chris sent me Were Vixens, which is not out yet. And,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
I'm sure it is. He's a great writer. He's definitely one of my
Yeah.
favorite indie authors out there. His books are just amazing. So it's definitely a cool guy.
I discovered the 13th Coyote, and reached out to him, and yeah, he's definitely been fun to talk to.
Have you read Body Art? Did you read
No.
Body Art by him? That's my favorite book of his so far. It's brutal. It has some similarities to Talia and some of the scene, not some of the scenes, but some of the, we'll say, interactions with some of the characters. Yeah, definitely check that out. And Full Brutal, one of his other books, was amazing as well.
Yeah, I got a mountain of books to get. It's just between now and November 1st, it's just so crazy. Yeah. Before I have an anxiety attack. One thing I like to ask people is to give me a horror blasphemy.
Oh God. Horror blasphemy would probably be to act rational. Like if you act rational and you call the cops on your cell phone and you get in a car and drive away, like that would be just blasphemous to me. Like
No, I
horror
meant
characters.
I mean, one of yours, like something you like that is kind of blasphemous, or something you don't like that would be blasphemous to say.
Okay. Let's see, something I like that would be blasphemous. I don't know because I really like a lot of horror in general. I'm trying to think if there's anybody that I'm like, this person sucks and I don't care for it. I mean, there's a couple Stephen King books I didn't like, but for the most part, pretty much love everything that he writes. Um, I really don't know. I don't know what a blasphemous thing would be that I just did not like. Because every author that I read, if I read one of their books, I'm kind of like, I don't like it. I probably won't go back to them at all. Oh, I'll tell you one that probably people probably want to fucking kick me in the ass for. I don't like Bentley Little.
Okay.
I read a couple of his books and I read The Resort and I thought it was the biggest hunk of shit I've ever read in my life. And I was so pissed that I was so hyped up. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be great. I'm gonna read this and it's gonna be awesome. And I started it and I'm like, all right, maybe it'll get better. And I kept going and I kept going. And I'm like, all right, this really isn't getting much better. And then we kept going and I'm like, I can't believe I fucking finished this thing. It was almost the equivalent of M. Night Shyamalan's The Village, where I'm
Oh
like, all
yeah.
right, this can be saved. All right, that's fucked up, but this can still be saved. And I got to the end, and I'm like, I can't believe I wasted fucking 2 hours on this movie.
I
So
feel
that's what,
like that about all his movies. So
yeah. I liked Signs, and I liked The Sixth Sense. Were they great? No, but I kind of they were watchable. But when I watched The Village, or the one with Mark Wahlberg, where the plants are killing people, I was like,
oh yeah.
fuck this guy.
I
So
just
yeah.
I just don't care about those movies at all.
I'm with you. I will never watch another one.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, mercifully, it's been about a decade too. So I mean, I have so many. Like I've railed against Blumhouse and everything else on the show in the last year.
Oh yeah, I hate Midsummer. Other than we sucked. I
You are
hated it.
correct, sir.
I hated it. I liked Hereditary. I thought it was watchable, probably because it was half the length of Midsummer.
Uh,
And when I was watching it, I'm like, this movie sucks. And I watched the whole thing, and I'm like, I can't believe I wasted my time on this, but I did. So never
I
get it
don't know.
back.
I don't know the biggest blasphemy we had. I probably we did have that the Rob Zombie Halloweens are better than the original. That was one that was pretty striking.
Yeah, that's blasphemous. I do like the
Yeah.
Evil Dead remake better than the original remake.
Oh
I don't know if
wow.
that's blasphemous, but
That's pretty blasphemous. But you're like,
yeah,
I mean, it's more hyper violent than.
it is. I hated Evil Dead too. I thought it was stupid.
Have you seen? There's a musical version of the Evil Dead.
Is there? Oh my god,
Yeah,
people do anything.
it's pretty funny actually. And if you're in the first, I think 10 rows, you're in the splatter zone.
Oh no, like a
So
Gallagher
what?
show?
Yeah, but with stage blood. And
Yeah.
then at the end, they just dump it on you because we were all white and we just came out like Carrie from the prom when we
Oh,
came out
awesome.
onto the streets of LA. Um, I know you said you're not a big movie guy, but I feel like you would like the movie Murder Set Pieces if you haven't seen it.
No, I'll have to check
Um,
it out.
yeah, it's pretty gruesome.
I
Uh,
like that.
yeah, I feel like you've probably seen or at least heard of a Serbian film.
I've seen a Serbian film. Yes.
I don't know that
Um,
one can say you like a Serbian film, but
it's a movie. I know that.
it's yeah, I guess.
Yeah, it was for what it was. It is what it is. They had obviously an agenda they wanted to put out there, and there was a movie they wanted to make. And all in all, I didn't think it was a bad movie. It's definitely extreme, and I think you have to kind of disassociate yourself with it and say like, this is not real, and it's a movie. You know, just like anything else. I mean, Hostel, Green Inferno, any of those things, Martyrs,
Yeah.
Cannibal Holocaust, all those really fucked up, gruesome kind of movies. And Serbian film's a Serbian film.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Somebody was asking me about it the other day, and I was like, I don't. I mean, it's just a lot of shocking images that are trying to shock you. I don't really know what more to tell you. Like,
Yeah, the storyline is very thin. Like it's not
Oh
anything,
yeah.
you could see the twist from the first like 30 minutes, if that. And and it goes back to the same thing with extreme horror in literature. People want to write to extreme to kind of gross you out or to shock you and stuff, and that's fine. And there is definitely a venue for that, but I kind of like that more, that story driven. If you don't like the characters, you're not going to care what happens to them.
Oh
So
yeah,
if you just want to
absolutely.
read about people getting raped and eviscerated and all this stuff and tortured in weird kind of ways, but you have no connection to them, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
whatever, just meat for the grinder.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, if you think to like the 70s and things like grindhouse cinema, and then sort of like, I don't know, in the late 90s, early sort of post 9/11 movies that try to like respond to that in terms of just creating what the New York Times labeled as torture porn. uh that is a thing, that is a genre, but it's not really plot driven in any way. Like I don't find Hostel to be plot driven in any way.
No, and Eli Roth movies, like I like Eli Roth movies for the most part because they do have that black comedy in there with them. There's some of that comedic relief, and Hostel was, it was what it was. And when the first one came out, and it was the same thing with Saw. When Saw for the first Saw, I thought was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I like the
Um,
first Saw.
the rest of them were kind of dog shit, but for the most part, the first one I thought was pretty good. Even the first three, I'll even go with saying were pretty good, but the rest of them are just train wrecks. But it's the same thing with Hostel. Like Hostel, when the first one came out, I thought was fairly innovative. It was the first one to not the first one to push those boundaries, but probably the first one with a budget to really push those boundaries. And I like the first one. The rest of them kind of I could have lived without, but
I like the ad campaign for Hostel more than I like the movie.
yeah.
um is there anything coming out, book, film, TV show, that you're looking forward to seeing, reading?
I'm trying to think of some upcoming releases. Like I said, movies. I'm not a huge movie guy because I do have small kids, so I don't get to watch them. My wife hates horror movies, so I don't watch them with her. So it's kind of like weekends or late at night. And I'm trying to think of what movie that I'd seen. There was something that was coming out that I was looking forward to, but um, book wise, Aaron Beauregard has a new one coming out that I actually got to pre-read. The Son of the Slob, which was awesome. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that.
I've seen a lot
Uh,
about that on social media lately.
yeah, cool. I was the first one to read it. He sent me a beta copy, an art copy to read, and because I'm a fast reader, and he was like, "Can you take a look at this and just see what you think?" And I loved it. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that coming out. Um, Chris Triana's book, The Were Vixens, I love his stuff, so I'm looking forward to that. Death's Head Press definitely has some good stuff coming out in the near future. With I think Brian Keene has released a new one through them. I think it's called With Teeth, vampire novella. Um, Trying to think what other ones that I know are on the horizon. That's pretty much it for the most part. My publisher's got some pretty good stuff that just came out. Ronald Kelly just dropped a new book through D&T Publishing. I obviously have mine coming out, and then there's some more big stuff on the horizon for them, I think.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure.
And thank you all for watching. And as always, stay spooky. Thank you for joining us for SunScream. Don't forget to tune in next week. Until then, stay spooky.